Fear and isolation cling to an abandoned farmhouse deep in the southern United States. In 2017, following the global chaos of the past bioterror outbreaks, a new nightmare begins, one seen through the eyes of an ordinary man. I'll be following my usual content by firstly explaining the story itself. Act 1. A Fate Worse Than Death. Ethan Winters receives a message from his wife, Mia, missing for 3 years and presumed dead, asking him to find her in Dulvey, Louisiana. Against all logic, Ethan answers the call. He arrives at the decaying plantation surrounded by swamp and silence. Inside, Mia is imprisoned in the basement. She warns him desperately to leave before Daddy finds them. With help from a mysterious woman named Zoe over the phone, Ethan and Mia attempt to escape through the attic. Suddenly, Mia is overtaken by madness and violently attacks Ethan. Left with no choice, he kills her in self-defense. Moments later, Ethan is ambushed and knocked unconscious by Jack Baker. Act 2. Meeting the Bakers. Ethan awakes at a dinner table bound and surrounded by the Baker family. Jack, the sadistic patriarch, Marguerite, his unhinged wife, Lucas, their cruel son, and an eerie, silent elderly woman in a wheelchair. The Bakers attempt to force-feed Ethan human remains before being distracted. Ethan escapes and begins searching the mansion for a way out, guided by Zoe, who reveals she is Jack's daughter. When a deputy investigates the house, Ethan tries to warn him, but Jack murders the officer without hesitation. Ethan kills Jack in retaliation, only to watch him regenerate moments later. The Bakers are not human anymore. Act 3. Fighting the Bakers. Ethan learns that Mia is still alive, infected with the same mold that empowers the Bakers. Zoe explains that a special serum can cure the infection, but 2 doses are required. To retrieve the ingredients, Ethan ventures into an old house and battles Marguerite, killing her after a grotesque mutation. Along the way, Ethan begins seeing visions of strange little girl. Lucas captures Mia and Zoe, forcing Ethan through deadly traps and monsters. Ethan survives, rescues both women, and then creates 2 doses for the serum. But Jack returns, now monstrously mutated. Ethan used 1 dose to heal Jack permanently, only 1 dose remains. Act 4. The Choice. So there are 2 choices here, so I'll go over both of them. Zoe path, the bad ending. Ethan kills Zoe, leaving Mia behind, as Ethan and Zoe escape by boat. Zoe reveals the truth. The Bakers were infected after Mia arrived years ago with a girl named Evelyn following a tanker shipwreck. Evelyn attacks, killing Zoe and knocking Ethan unconscious. Ethan sees a vision of Jack, now sane, who explains Evelyn's power to control minds through infection and begs Ethan to kill her. The story shifts from Mia to the shipwreck. She finds Ethan and gives him Evelyn's DNA, but Evelyn takes control of her. Mia attacks Ethan and Ethan is forced to kill her. This path ends in loss and regret. The Mia path, the true ending. Ethan kills Mia, Zoe stays behind, saying a bitter goodbye. Ethan and Mia reach the wrecked tanker ship where Evelyn attacks. Ethan is knocked out and sees Jack's warning again. The story shifts to Mia's perspective. Evelyn calls Mia her mother, triggering recovered memories. Mia was tasked with overseeing Evelyn, an E-series bioweapon during transport. Evelyn escaped, destroyed the ship, and infected Mia to force her into a family role. Mia resists Evelyn long enough to save Ethan and give him a vial of Evelyn's DNA. Act 5. The Truth. Ethan enters his abandoned salt mine and uncovers the hidden laboratory. He learns that Evelyn infects victims with a psychological mold that causes insanity, regurgitation, and extreme mutations. Her desire for a family drove everything. Lucas is revealed to be working with the shadow organization behind Evelyn, immune to her control and pretending to serve her. Ethan synthesizes a toxin to kill Evelyn and returns back to the Baker house. Evelyn attacks Ethan with hallucinations and visions, but he pushes forward. Finale. The grandmother revealed. Ethan injects Evelyn with the toxin. She transforms. A horrifying truth is revealed. Evelyn was the elderly woman in the wheelchair all along. She mutates into a massive monster. With help from a powerful weapon dropped by a military helicopter, Ethan destroys her. Epilogue. Ethan is rescued by Blue Umbrella, led by Chris Redfield. If Zoe was chosen, Ethan finds only Mia's belongings and discards them in grief. If Mia was chosen, she's rescued alongside him. As the helicopter departs, the Blue Umbrella logo is revealed, a symbol of a dark past attempting redemption. The nightmare is over, but survival horror has been reborn. Resident Evil 7 has sparked years of debate among fans, with theories exploring nature of the mold, Ethan Winters' true identity, Evelyn Powers, and the wider bioterror network operating behind the scenes. I have accumulated some of the most predominant and compelling theories. Ethan Winters is special, or a bioorganic weapon. One of the most popular theories suggests that Ethan is not an ordinary civilian. Despite prolonged exposure to Evelyn and the mold, Ethan shows a unique resistance to mental control. Unlike the Bakers or Mia, Evelyn is never able to fully dominate his mind. This has led fans to theorise that Ethan may be either a dormant or experimental bioorganic weapon, or even a member of the Westline bloodline, with Ethan Winters acting as a synonym for Ethan Wesker. His extreme physical resilience, his ability to reattach limbs, and the survival of otherwise fatal injuries support the idea that Ethan was infected earlier than the player realises, or was never fully human to begin with. Lucas Baker, monster or victim? Lucas Baker is almost universally viewed as irredemptible, but a deeper look suggests his cruelty may not have been innate. Common evidence used against Lucas. He allegedly locked a boy named Oliver in his attic until he starved. His mother took him for a head scan, implying early psychological issues. Locals described him as the bad seed. However, none of these events are given a specific year. Counter theory. Evelyn made Lucas what he became. This theory proposes that all of Lucas' infamous actions occurred after Evelyn entered the Baker house. Lucas's journal is not found during the Daughters DLC, only years later in the main game. In Daughters, Lucas behaves like a bitter but normal young adult, not a sadistic killer. Zoe still shows concern for him, suggesting he hasn't crossed a moral point of no return. The Bakers themselves periodically regain free will, showing Evelyn's control was gradual. It is possible Lucas's increasingly violent behavior occurred while he was attending university, slowly losing sanity as the mold spread. The serum and Lucas's free will. Lucas, after he receives a serum from the connections that prevent Evelyn from controlling him, but the mold still remains in his body. This explains why. Lucas continues committing atrocities after being freed. Upon the death in Not a Hero, mold violently erupts from his body. The serum blocked Evelyn's commands, but it did not cure the infection. In this view, Lucas was never cured, only tethered from Evelyn, leaving raw psychosis behind. Evelyn's true power was suppressed. Evelyn was regularly administered a stabilizing serum to prevent rapid aging and mental collapse. A theory suggests this serum also suppressed her full potential and limited her ability to kill or overpower hosts. Earlier in the story, Evelyn kills victims by rapidly overgrowing mold within their bodies, yet later she's unable to do this to Ethan. This inconsistency suggests that powers may have been weakened, or that Ethan's unique condition made him resistant. Ironically, the serum meant to control Evelyn may have also been to strengthen her resilience, making her harder to kill. The E-Series, the mold, and the infection stages. The E-Series bioweapons were created by Tensu, with technical assistance from HCF, leading to the development of Mutasite. Stages of infection. The initial stage, rapid regeneration, reattached limbs, accelerated hearing. Mid-stage, auditory visual hallucinations, including mental influence. Final stage, unique mutations based on the host. Example, Jack had extreme regeneration, please, thank you. Marguerite had insect control, Mia enhanced strength and durability, and Lucas, we don't know the specialization, possibly psychological warfare, but this explains why Zoe confidently staples Ethan's hand back on. She likely knew the regeneration would restore it. Mia Winter's hidden agenda. Mia's role as Evelyn's handler raises questions about how much she truly knew. Some theories argue Mia was fully aware of Evelyn's dangers. Her relationship with Ethan may have been partly constructed. She remained connected to the connections longer than she admits. While the canon ending portrays Mia as a resourceful, ambiguity remains. The Connections Organization. The Connections are widely believed to be the next major antagonist force in the franchise. Fans speculated that they may be linked to Las Plagas, be experimenting with family-based control structures, and continue being a bioweapon development seen in Resident Evil Village. Their influence clearly extends far beyond Dolby. Final interpretation. If Lucas was truly a victim after born a monster, Jack Baker's words carry devastating weight. None of us were bad people. We reached the point in the video where I say my personal opinions. So, when I played Resident Evil 7, I completely understood why so many people praise it for reviving the franchise. That being said, the more time I spent with it, the more time I started noticing small issues slowly adding up. They aren't massive game-breaking flaws, but they are enough to design problems to keep me from feeling like the masterpiece is often described as. For example, the enemy variety felt repetitive. When I played, I noticed the mold enemies were way too much, and the initial fear factor faded because most encounters started feeling the same. There are only a few variations, and none of them evolve in interesting ways. Compared to how memorable the Bakers are, the molds just feel bland and forgettable. As I got further into the game, I noticed a clear drop in quality after leaving the Baker's house. The early seasons are incredibly strong, but the final act felt rushed and less inspired. You beat... what's her name? You beat Evelyn straight away, and it's not much and it's not very hard. The environments become less interesting, and the boss fight didn't feel tense or meaningful as the early encounters. By the end, it felt more like I was going through emotions than experienced true survival horror. When I played, the slow movements and awkward combat stood out to me more than I expected. I understand it's meant to build tension, but there were moments where it just felt frustrating. Instead of feeling scared of enemies, I felt limited by Ethan's movement and the way combat was handled. While I was playing, I noticed many of the puzzles that relied heavily on video game logic, special keys, symbolic locks, and contrived mechanics that didn't make much sense in the setting. Instead of pulling deeper into the horror, these puzzles sometimes reminded me that I was just playing the game. Because Who House has 7 different keys with little animals on it. When I played through the story, I noticed that some major plot points didn't hit as hard as they should have. The ideas were interesting, but the execution felt rushed or underdeveloped. Because of that, I didn't feel emotionally invested as I want to be, especially towards the end. One thing I did really notice while playing was how fragmented the experience could feel. The game pulls a lot of horror tropes, found footage, psychological horror, southern gothic themes, but instead of blending smoothly, they felt forced. The game shines in individual moments, but as a complete package, it didn't hold together for me. After finishing the game, I realized how much context and character development was pushed into the DLC. While the DLC is well made, I feel like it should have been in the base game on its own because some parts of the story was missing. That all being said, I did really love it. It was one of my favourite games that I've ever played. So, when I played Resident Evil 7, the first thing that stood out to me was how confidently it returned to the true survival horror. I'd been waiting a long time for Resident Evil to step away from the pure action and lean back into fear, tension, and vulnerability, and Resident Evil 7 finally did that. When I played, I immediately noticed how much unnecessary action-focused design had been stripped away. Instead of the constant firefights, the game focused on limited resources, exploration, and decision-making. Am I mattered? Healing mattered. Every encounter felt like a risk. It felt like Resident Evil remembered what they've made the game for. While playing, I was genuinely uncomfortable, like in a good way. The Baker's estate feels dirty, decaying, and unsafe, like something straight out of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The sound design, lighting, and environmental storytelling made me feel like the danger has always been nearby. The first-person perspective amplified this even more, making every hallway feel like a corner and a personal threat. When I started playing, I was very skeptical about the switch to first person, but the longer I played, the more I realised how effective it was. Being forced into see the world through Ethan's eye made everything feel closer, more invasive, and more intense. I felt exposed in a way third person could never quite achieve. When I played, I really appreciated how the game emphasises exploration and backtracking. Solving puzzles, unlocking shortcuts, and slowly learning the outline of the Baker house made it feel like a living space rather than a series of levels. Combined with the scarce resources, this created a constant tension that made every choice feel meaningful. Jack, Marguerite, and Lucas were easily the highlight of my playthrough. When I played, they felt relentless, unpredictable, deeply unsettling. Jack's constant pursuit, Marguerite's grotesque transformation, and Lucas' sadistic games made feel most memorable in the villains in the entire franchise. They weren't just bosses, they were permanent threats. When I played, I loved how strange and uncomfortable the boss fights felt. Instead of standard game encounters, many battles felt chaotic, desperate, and unpredictable. It fit the tone perfectly and reinforced the feeling that you were surviving, not overpowering your enemies. Although not everybody experiences it in this way, when I played or watched Resident Evil 7 in VR, it became a completely different beast. The ability to move the entire game in PlayStation VR makes it one of the most intense horror experiences available. The immersion is overwhelming in the best way possible. While playing, I noticed how strong the visuals were, especially in the first-person Resident Evil. The RE engine delivers detailed environments, realistic lighting, and convincing animations. For a new engine, it handled gameplay and environmental interaction surprisingly well, and helped sell the ground horror to me. For the 2/3 of my playthrough, the pacing felt almost perfect. The game takes you from building to dread to building to dread, letting the tension breathe instead of constantly throwing enemies at you. When I played through these early sections, every step forward felt earned. When I played Resident Evil 7, it felt like a careful constructed survival horror package. It doesn't just do one thing well, it blends atmosphere, tension, exploration, puzzles, and memorable villains into an experience that respects the genre. Even with its flaws, the game succeeds where it matters most. It made me feel scared, vulnerable, and invested again. Would I recommend Resident Evil 7 to a friend? Yes, but I would warn them. When I played Resident Evil 7, I genuinely enjoyed the experience overall, especially as someone who has been waiting for the series to return to its true survival horror. If a friend asked me whether or not they should play it, my answer would depend on what kind of Resident Evil fan they are and what they're looking for in a horror game. I would absolutely recommend it to anyone who enjoys slow burn horror, tense atmosphere, limited resources, and feeling vulnerable over than powerful. When I played, in the early hours of the Baker's House was some of the most effective horror moments I've experienced in the franchise. That alone makes the game worth playing. However, I'd like to be honest about its flaws. I'd warn them that the enemy variety is limited and the final act isn't as strong as the opening. And some puzzles and the story beats the land for everyone. When I played, those issues didn't ruin the game, but they did stop it from being an all-time favorite. If my friend prefers heavy action Resident Evil like Resident Evil 4, 5, and 6, I'd probably tell them this game not be oh my god, can I speak today? This game might not be for them, or at least go into the right expectations. But if they love horror first and combat second, I'd confidently recommend it. Overall, when I finished Resident Evil 7, it felt like it was a game that I respected and enjoyed, even though I didn't think it was perfect. Because of that, yes, I would recommend it to a friend, as long as they know exactly what kind of experience they're getting. I've been Critical Fate. Thank you for your time.